Reading number one from The World's Fair by E.L. Doctorow. All around us, hawkers were selling pins and pennants and bags of roasted peanuts. I really wanted one of those football pins, miniature footballs painted golden brown with painted laces attached to a ribbon with each team's colors, blue for the Giants, silver and red for the Dodgers. But I didn't want to be thought of as a baby. The footballs were made in Japan, and you could pry them like walnuts in half at the seams. We could hear the crowds roaring inside the stadium as the teams warmed up. Occasionally, we heard the sound of a punt. Our line inched forward with tormenting slowness. What could be worse than being on the outside and hearing cheers rise from behind the ballpark walls? The L pulled into the station overhead, and people came running down the stairs. The sidewalks overflowed. People ran and walked in the streets between the cars. I developed that specific prayerful longing that went in with these situations. If we got into the game, I said to myself, I would do my homework every day for a week, the minute I got home from school. I would help my mother when she asked. I would go to bed when I was told to. Taxis kept pulling up and discharging passengers. Occasionally, I saw a limousine polished to a black shine, with one of those open driver's seats and with white sidewall wheels and glittering chrome radiators and headlamps, and a running board trimmed in new gray rubber. The chauffeur would run around to the sidewalk door, and out would step elegant women in fur coats and men in belted camel hair coats, the collars turned up. They carried leather cases, which I understood were filled with flasks of whiskey and picnic delicacies, and they carried plaid blankets to keep warm, and some of them were recognized by people in the crowd who called to them. They waved, smiling, as they passed through the gates. One or two older men in black coats and Homburgs were saluted by policemen on guard. I saw in these sportsmen, I derived from them, information of a high life of celebrity, wealth, and the careless accommodation of pleasure. I understood that these people were politicians and gamblers first and sportsmen second. Something in their attitude appropriated the occasion. It was theirs. The team was theirs, the ballpark was theirs, and I, standing with my runny nose and muffled to invisibility in a buffing crowd of heavy-coated football fans on the outside and waiting to get in, a momentary swatch of color at the edge of their field of vision, I was theirs too. I felt all this keenly and became angry. Someone jostled me, and I was pushed back with my elbow. Then there was a commotion in the street. One of the ticket booths had closed its window and put the sold out sign behind the little iron bars protecting the opaque window glass. The crowd at this kiosk dissolved noisily, there was shouting, and people invaded the lines at the other windows not yet shut down. Policemen were running towards us from the street and from under the concrete stands. Another elevated train thundered in. It's about game time, Donald said, and just then another roar went up and our line dissolved into a swirling, pushing, angry mass. He was exasperated. Where's Dad? He said. We've come here for nothing. At this moment, as we stood bewildered and feeling bruised with disappointment, we heard a voice. Don, Edgar, over here. My father was waving to us at the edge of the crowd. We pushed our way toward him. This way, my father said, and his eyes alight. In his hand, he held 3 tickets spread out like cards. What? We said, finding it hard to believe. He'd done it. From one moment to the next, he led us from despair to exhilaration through the turnstiles and up the ramp into the bright sunlight of the stadium. Ah, what a moment, coming out into the raked tiers, seeing with my own eyes the green grass field, the white stripes, the color of the 2 helmeted teams deployed for the kickoff. Tens of thousands of people roared with anticipation. Pigeons flew into the air. The game was about to begin. Incredibly, my father had gotten tickets for the lower stands on the 35-yard line. We couldn't believe our good fortune. It was magic. His face was flushed with delight. His eyes widened, and he pursed his mouth and puffed his cheeks like a clown. We were no sooner seated and the game was underway than he looked around and spotted an usher. 5 minutes later, we were in even better seats, farther back in the section, where with some altitude we could now see the whole field clearly. What do you think of this? My father said, smiling at us in triumph. Not bad, eh? He loved this sort of situation, the suspense of getting in just at the last moment. The game meant more now, more than it might have if he had purchased the tickets a week in advance. There was no question we were witnesses to a momentous event. The two teams struggled back and forth on the field. We groaned or cheered as the pass was caught or the punt dropped. Donald and I followed the game intensely, cracking peanut shells and chewing and frowning and offering each other extended critiques of the action. My father was more calm. He smoked his cigar and every now and then closed his eyes and turned his face up to the afternoon sun. The Giants were in blue jerseys and the Dodgers in red and silver, and both wore the section-leathered helmets that came around the ears, and the buff-colored canvas pants, and the black high lace-up shoes. When the sun went below the roof level of the upper stands, long shadows fell across the field and across our faces. The changing color of the day brought new moods to the game, new fortitude and desperation to the embattled lines, as the backs slashed off tackle or did their line bucks, as the centers hiked the ball and the backfield ran in box formation and compacted into their handoffs and laterals and blocks, and ran and threw from their scattered single wing. They were well matched. You could feel their effort. You heard the thudding leather of their shoulder pads. The dust flew up in the planes of sunlight as they fought on the dirt path of the part of the field, the baseball diamond. My father did not passionately root for the Dodgers. It seemed more important to him that the score remain close. Donald and I wanted the Giants to pull ahead and win without any equivocation. Something happened to the sound of the game. The dimming light seemed to give it distance. Ace Parker punted the ball for the Dodgers, and it rose high over the tops of the stands. Then I heard the sound of his shoe hitting the football. In the late afternoon, dusk falling, the game ended, with the Giants winning by 1 touchdown. Everyone cheered. The two teams walked together toward the small bleachers at the end of the field and climbed the stairs under the scoreboard into their locker rooms. They held their helmets in their hands. Fans leaped over the bleacher walls and called to them. People flowed onto the field. We made our way down. It was awesome to tread in the black grass, with the marks of the cleats visible like traces of battle. It seemed to me a historic sight. It was a hard, cold ground. A wind blew in from the open backs of the stands, which now stood silhouetted, a great horseshoe-shaped shed, little light bulbs glittering dimly in each section of the upper and lower tiers. The air down here on the field was pungent with the cold. It smelled electric. I apprehended the awesome skill and strength of the football player. Boys ran through the crowd, dodging and dashing about like halfbacks with invisible balls under their arms. I walked with my brother and my father to the field gates, passing under the scoreboard and out to 155th Street. Here, the milling crowds, the gabble, the horns of taxis, the rumble of trains, and police on horseback blowing their whistles brought my mind back to the city. We were hoarse and tired. The day was over. We pushed our way down the subway steps into the crowd on the station platform. We jammed into the train, the three of us forced together, packed tight in the train and barreling toward the dark Sunday night.